Paraguay is a country of contrasts, at once incredibly old and very modern. The people of Paraguay celebrate the history and culture of their nation in their monuments, both natural and man-made. From the breathtaking natural beauty of Iguazu Falls in the south, to the stone missions of the Santísima Trinidad de Paraná, Paraguay has many places to discover. The Society of Jesus established itself in the region known as the Guairá in 1588, by permission of King Philip II of Spain. One of the Jesuits' objectives became the protection of the native peoples against the abuses of the feudal Encomienda labor system, which had reduced them to a condition of virtual slavery. At the same time, they would be educated and brought into the Christian Church. Following the granting of the frontier zone of Paraguay to the Jesuits in 1609 by the Spanish crown, the religious order moved into the lands of the Guarani people in the Rio, and each land established its own mission. In the southeast of Paraguay, the Jesuits relocated to Santiago from Guaira and founded the new missions of Jesús de Tavarangue, Santa Rosa, and Trinidad in 1706. La Santísima Trinidad, one of the best preserved missions in the country, is of great symbolic importance because its decoration, with its fusion of Christian and native artistic elements, reflects the spirit of its conception. La Santísima Trinidad is the most ambitious of Paraguay's missions, as well as the capital of the Guairá. The missions, also called reducciones, were centers of community life. Along one side of a wide square stood the main buildings, including the church, college, and churchyard. Housing for the Indios lined the other three sides of the square. The missions were to become politically autonomous indigenous communities, organized as Christian utopias, and would number up to 20,000 inhabitants. The buildings of the Santísima Trinidad are built in the Baroque style. The stones of the church's facade, tower, and sacristy door were carved by the Guarani Indians. The church is also adorned with stone sculptures, wood carvings, musical instruments, and paintings made by the Indians. This imposing reducción, home to 3,500 Indians, took 61 years to build, from 1706 to 1767. The Trinidad Church has retained its beautiful sculptures, as well as its crypt and baptismal font. Despite its partly ruined state, its original magnificence can be easily imagined. The creation of new mission communities formed a response to two issues. One was the growing population of some missions as measured against the ability of mission agriculture to provide enough food to feed all of the neophytes. The second reason was geopolitical. By relocating and establishing new missions east of the Uruguay River, the Jesuits established Spanish claims to sovereignty over the hinterland of the Banda Oriental, an isolated Colonia del Sacramento from Portuguese territory to the north. The carved stone pulpit, font, and other masonry and relief sculpture of the church has been partially restored. An impressive view of the frieze high on the altar wall, entirely decorated on the stone itself, with a sequence of angels in Baroque postures together with their instruments. The missions were also known as reductions, a somewhat infelicitous term that requires clarification. The word is a transliteration of the Spanish reducción, itself a derivation of the Latin verb reducere, meaning to lead back or together. A happier though inaccurate translation would be community or settlement, since the original term carries no negative connotation. The Indians were in no modern sense reduced. The former sacristy houses a museum with sculptures and a model of the mission. Interesting statues, which have retained their original color, were discovered during the excavations in the church, along with the bones of some of the missionaries buried there. The Guarani were very skilled in handicrafts, sculpture, and wood carving, and thus the reducciones were in some sense the first industrial state in South America. Indeed, Some missions produce such sophisticated crafts as watches and musical instruments. Folk art in Paraguay is an expression of the cultural mixture of the Spanish and Guarani. It has its roots in the original handicraft workshops created in the first towns of the colony. This branch demonstrates the admirable fusion of elements and techniques of the two cultural heritages it represents. Guided by the Jesuits, the Indios established a society based on the principles of primitive Christianity. They expounded advanced laws, founded free public services for the poor, schools, hospitals, distributed birth control, and suppressed the death penalty. The inhabitants of the reducciones worked in the Tumpambe lands, which were property of the community, and all the products they produced were fairly divided among them. Various reasons explain the decline of the Jesuit missions in Paraguay. A series of epidemics in the 1730s spread through the region and caused short-term declines in the populations of many of the missions. The movement of goods within the region, the mobilization of thousands of Guarani militiamen, and the movement of troops created conditions ideal for the spread of highly contagious crowd diseases, such as smallpox and measles. Another reason for the decline of the missions was a result of the signing of the Treaty of Madrid in 1750, which attempted to establish colonial boundaries between Spain and Portugal in South America. One provision in the treaty stipulated the transfer of the Portuguese outpost Colonia do Sacramento for the territory that included the sites of the 7 missions located east of the Uruguay River. An old cemetery is located on the grounds of the mission. The tower of the mission, with its square base, is reminiscent of a fort tower. It is not known whether it was used as a belfry, an observation tower, or both. The columns of the early church, with their disproportionate capitals, are adorned with a triple row of leaves supporting the frieze with pillars and a sculptural motif. La Santísima Trinidad de Paraná, often referred to by the locals as simply the ruins of Trinidad, was one of the last of the Jesuit reducciones to be built in the Paraná River area. Located about 11 kilometers from the Jesuit ruins in Trinidad lies the mission of Jesús de Tavarangue. Established in 1685, it was populated with natives from another mission in Paraguay. Construction on the massive stone church began in the 1750s, though was never completed. The building of the missions constituted the quintessential manifestation of the creation of new utopian communities on the fringes of Spanish America. Although it took years or even decades to complete the final stages of construction of the new communities, there were common elements in the general design and layout of the missions. The master plan was the same as that used in the cities built in the New World. Both were laid out on a grid plan and organized around a central square known as a plaza. Medieval European convents and monasteries also influenced the design of the missions. The central structure of the church measures almost 70 meters long and 24 meters wide. Approximately 3,000 Guaranis worked on the construction of the church that was to be a replica of the famous Church of St. Ignatius of Loyola in Rome. The red brick stones, contrasting with the flat surrounding landscape in lush green, emphasizes the grand scale of the church and the enormous undertaking of its construction. The buildings at the Jesús de Tavarangue mission display various Spanish-style features. The 3 massive arched doors forming the church's entrance structure present Moorish influence. Magnificent and imposing stone walls surround the mission. This elaborate mural is an example of the sophisticated artistic styles and skills of the Guarani stonemasons. The development of artistic creativity in the missions led to a flourishing of architecture, with the magnificently decorated churches as their best example. The Jesuits in turn protected the tribes from negative influences and exploitation by the Europeans. Since these areas of South America were remote from the Spanish and Portuguese crowns, the Jesuits were able to effectively establish their own powerful domains. When the Jesuits were expelled from the Spanish colonies in 1768, many major church construction projects were left incomplete. The most notable example of this was the great stone church at Jesús de Tavarangue, which was left without a roof and never completed despite efforts made by the priests that replaced the Jesuits. Today, their ruins evoke images of the great churches built in the decades prior to the expulsion of the Jesuits. The ruins of the Jesuit missions reflect a significant chapter in the history of Paraguay. They reveal a way of life for the native Guaranis that was enhanced by the arrival of the Jesuit priests. Although the architecture of the natives' dwellings wasn't elaborate, it represented a significant improvement in stylistic terms from the original homes built of mud and grass. The Guaranis shared not only in the work inside the missions, they also shared in the products that were created and grown there. They were also introduced to the Catholic religion that still dominates the country today. They also learned skills and trades that have been handed down through the generations. The ruined church of Jesús de Tavarangue retains much of its imposing appearance, though only one room of the college survives. There are also significant remains of the urban structure, including the Plaza Mayor, native dwellings, and cemeteries. The two communities who lived side by side in the missions each had their own exceptional history. Founded by Ignatius of Loyola in 1534 and given the name the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit fathers have played a significant role in the education of peoples throughout the world from the 16th century up to the present day. The word Guarani means warrior. The Guarani were one of the several tribes that originated along the Atlantic coast of South America thousands of years ago. The Guarani natives of Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil would have become another indigenous people victimized by the colonization of South America if the Jesuits hadn't been able to persuade the King of Spain to grant the vast region they inhabited to their care. Jesuit missionaries attempted to create primitive utopian Christian communities in Paraguay, and the building complexes of the missions provided the template for the newly ordered societies the missionaries attempted to create. European and New World convents and monasteries, as well as new ideas governing urban development in the Americas, provided the model for the missions. The Jesuit missions of La Santísima Trinidad and Jesús de Tavarangue were included on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1993.